It is an honor for me to introduce our guest speaker, Jocelyn Boone. Jocelyn, I'm not going to tell your story, but Jocelyn is a young dialysis patient from Portagrave, and she has an amazing story to tell. I was a staff nurse at the Carboneer Dialysis Unit when Jocelyn found out she was going to become a mom. Over the next few months, we certainly, I can speak for all the nurses in the unit, became very connected to Jocelyn and this new little life she was carrying. For the last several weeks of her pregnancy, she had to have her treatments in St. John's, and so she had to move into St. John's. During that time, I as well was starting a new job in the city at the Health Science Dialysis Unit, so I was very fortunate to be able to continue on this journey with Jocelyn. And I was there right up until her beautiful little baby was born, and was lucky to be able to hold her in my arms on her very first day of her life. So it is a great privilege for me to be here today to help Jocelyn get her very compelling and miraculous story out there. So without further ado, I would like to present to you Jocelyn Boone.
I'd like just to say how happy I am to see everyone here today. This walk is not only important for donations toward a great cause, but even though the money is great, it's also important to raise awareness towards organ donation. I was asked to share my story, and as you can tell, I'm pretty nervous, and I don't really want to picture you all in your underwear, but so I just have to remember that I'm just speaking with normal people, and I don't have a skill, or I didn't do education to come here and stand in front of you. And I'm hoping that my story will be inspirational to some of you, if not all of you. I was born on July 21st, 1982, to Dorothy and Edwin Kennedy. I was born with infantile polycystic kidney disease, which meant that my kidneys were covered in cysts and were 10 times their normal size. Because of this, my lungs did not develop properly, so I was put on a respirator and tube fed. The doctors only gave me a few hours to live. This news, of course, would be very hard for any parent to swallow, but the fact that my mother had lost an infant just 2-3 years before to the very same disease, just a few hours after she was born, must have been very devastating for my family. But because of my mother's faith and the love and prayers of family and friends, and of course, the God-given talents of doctors and nurses, a miracle happened and I'm still here today. In August 1982, I was sent to the Sick Children's Hospital in Toronto, where my parents were told that I would probably need a transplant. But before I came back home to Newfoundland, the doctors found that my kidneys were working satisfactory, and thankfully I didn't need a transplant. However, because of my lung problems at 4 months old, the doctors performed a tracheotomy. I can't say that. A tracheotomy. Within the 6 years of my life, I developed a few other health problems and weight, but apparently I was a fighter, and after 16 months of hospitalization, I was finally able to go home. I came home December 2nd, 1983. I lived a normal childhood. Just like any other child, I loved to play on the cliffs and beaches of Portagrave, swim in the Portagrave Pond, and of course, catch snails and have snail races, which was all very exciting. The only thing I really knew about the hospital was the occasional doctor checkup and blood work every year to make sure everything was still okay. And of course, the results were always good. But unfortunately, at the age of 15, kidney disease has found its way back into my life. I found out that I had kidney failure as me and my mother sat in the doctor's office and went over details of treatment, such as dialysis, diet restrictions, and even a transplant. I remember thinking my life is over. But also, I remember thinking of one very important question that not many kids at the age of 15 would even think about asking. And this question was, will I ever be able to have children? When I asked that question, I got a very disappointing response, as I learned that it would almost be impossible for me to have children. So from there, I was admitted into the hospital right away and was quickly started on hemodialysis. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are aware of what hemodialysis is, but it is basically a machine that would artificially clean your blood. The blood is transferred from your body through the machine, filtering and removing waste and sometimes fluid, and then transferred back into your body. This was done 3 times a week for 4.5 hours. I remember it being very difficult for the first few treatments, but I only had 1 week of treatment when the doctors asked me if I was interested in doing peritoneal dialysis, which peritoneal dialysis would give me at least a more semi-normal life. But again, for those of you who aren't aware of it, peritoneal dialysis is basically dialysis fluid that stays in your body and is transferred in and out for 4 times a day. This seemed like a lot of work when I thought about it, but the benefit of not having to come back and forth to the hospital seemed much greater. My mother and I did the training, and once we were trained and the surgery was performed, we came home. I found it difficult at first to get used to the 4 treatments a day. I quickly got used to it though, and found myself quickly getting back into life. I woke up every morning, did a treatment, went to high school, and did a treatment again at lunchtime. Luckily, I had lots of friends that were there to support me during my lunch dialysis. Very seldom did I find myself eating alone. I still went to friends' houses after school, but made sure I came home again for my supper time treatment, and then at night did another one. Peritoneal dialysis did take up a lot of my time, but I still had a life. I went to sleepovers, I went to youth events with my church, and even went shopping to St. John's, where I did dialysis in the back of the car. I even had a plan to go to a week-long event of youth camp at Camp Emmanuel in Lewisport. Summer of '99, I was getting ready to go to camp. I stayed at my sister's house in Lewisport a few days before to make sure that all my medical equipment would make it to camp. And because I had so much equipment, I had to have a cabin, which really wasn't that bad. I was set to go when on August 15th, the day before camp started, my dad called. Now when my dad called, I know something is up. He doesn't call for no reason. Usually it was Mom. So when I got the phone call, the first thing my dad said was, "They have a kidney for you. You have to go to Halifax tomorrow." I couldn't believe it. So many emotions were going on in my head. Doubt, fear, excitement, and believe it or not, disappointment that I was going to miss camp, friends and boys. But hey, I was 17. What can you expect? But I quickly got over that, and the next day I was on my way to Halifax. On the way to Halifax, as we were flying, we were in the smallest plane I've ever seen in my life. I still had many emotions going on, but mostly fear, worrying if everything will be okay and thinking that hopefully it will all be worth it in the end. Many of you may think that I would be crazy to even wonder why, would having a transplant all be worth it, or if it would be a better life for me. And of course, now I realize it definitely was. But at the time, at 17 years old, and being responsible enough to watch what I ate and taking care of a new organ in my body seemed like such a great responsibility. But as I was thinking about all this and trying not to stress out over it, I looked out of the tiny plane window, and believe it or not, over the bed of clouds, I saw a rainbow. And I'm sure most of you all know the story in the Bible about Noah and the ark and how God displayed the rainbow in the sky after the flood as a promise. Well, this rainbow that I saw became a promise to me as well. And for the rest of the flight, I felt that peace and knew in my heart that everything will be okay. Within 24 hours, I had a new kidney, which worked well from the moment it was put into my body. I was put into isolation for 1 month, not seeing anyone's face, complete face, not even my mother's, who stayed with me, because they had to wear a mask and a coat in order to stay or enter my room. Eventually, I was able to venture out and explore the hospital floor I was on, but I was not allowed to leave the floor, but that was okay. I made friends, kids younger than me, and a few my age that were going through the same things as I was. Then eventually, I was able to go outside. In October, I was finally on my way home again. In November, I ended up having a minor rejection, and I was sent to Halifax again. But this was quickly resolved, and I was headed home again in December. I am very thankful for the doctors and nurses in Halifax for all they've done for me, and I will never forget them. During the next 12 years of my life, I lived a great life, a normal life. I finished high school, went to college, got a diploma in office administration. The summer before I started college, I met my future husband, Jonathan. We met at family camp, again at Camp Emmanuel in Lewisport. I was working with the children's program while he was working with the teen program, and we met with a bunch of young adults when we got together to play Dutch Blitz. By the time camp was over, I knew that I just wanted to be friends. But as time went on, after many phone calls, he won me over. After dating him for so long, it took me almost 3 months before I told him about my transplant, or that I even had kidney disease. I'll be there. Before this phone call, I managed to refrain from topics such as health and family plans. But as soon as I told him about my transplant and the kidney problem, just by his calm and caring, I'll be there for you reaction, I knew he was the right man for me. In fact, not to embarrass him, but I ended up asking him to marry me. It was on Father's Day, and I remember I was visiting him that weekend, and after church, we were downstairs, and everyone was upstairs getting lunch ready. And I got on my knees and looked at him and said, "There is nothing that I want more in my life than for you to be the father of my children. Will you marry me?" Looking back now, I realized that I wasn't even thinking about what I was saying. I wasn't thinking about the doctor's response to my question so many years ago about not being able to have children. And it also wasn't out of desperation. All I knew was that I wanted him in my life, and I was getting impatient for him to ask me. After he got over the initial shock of what just happened, he looked at me and asked, "Are you serious?" But then quickly said yes. He just couldn't believe that I asked him. But of course, then 2 weeks after, we found ourselves in St. John picking out a ring, and then he asked me to marry him on the bridge at Holyrood Swimming Park. This event would have been much more romantic if I hadn't had a sprained ankle. But because of my sprained ankle, I saw his determination to make me his wife. He borrowed his grandmother's wheelchair to venture the malls in St. John's to Holyrood, and then practically made me close my eyes the whole way to Holyrood, and then practically carried me from the parking lot to the bridge. It was all worth it, and December 30th, we were married. A few days after we got married, we moved to Fort McMurray, Alberta. We stayed there for 4.5 years, worked, made friends, bought a trailer, got a dog, had fun. On June 2010, we moved back home. Moving back home, I think, was the best decision we had made so far in our marriage. It was nice to be back with family and friends, back in my hometown. Then in February 2012, my life took another turn. I got pneumonia, and with that, my kidneys that I had for 13 years had failed. March 3rd, 2012, I started hemodialysis treatment again, 3 times a week, 4 hours a day. You may wonder when I'm going to get to my story of hope. But my story of hope started a long time ago when I was born. My parents found hope in their faith and the prayers and support of loved ones and doctors and nurses that cared for me. And miraculously, I lived to be the first infant to survive infantile polycystic kidney disease in Newfoundland. When I was 15 and I learned firsthand what a life-threatening disease can do to a person's life, I found hope in the support of families and friends, doctors and nurses, and the dialysis treatment that helped me live, in hopes that one day I would receive a transplant. When I finally received a kidney transplant, I lived with the hope that I was going to have a normal life without dialysis, even though I knew it wouldn't last forever. The day I got married, I found hope that life really does continue, and you can have a normal life with kidney disease. And now I have a supporting, loving husband to help me through anything that I may face in the future. Around December 2012, I found myself getting tired and sick, and I blamed it on working too hard in the kitchen at the Klondike Hotel in Bay Roberts. As well, my port was acting up. And I thought that maybe I wasn't getting my treatments as good as needed. So I asked the doctors to give me a new port. That's how bad it was. I was willing to go through the pain of getting a new port in order to figure out if that was what was causing me so much agony. I had blood work done and my thyroid level was up. So the doctors decided that in order to do a more in-depth test on my thyroid, first they had to find out if there was any chance that I could be pregnant. So I had another blood work done that day after dialysis. My doctor called me and said, "Your test came back positive, but this may be signs of miscarriage. There is very little chance that you could be pregnant, but we will do an ultrasound to make sure." I just cried. What if I was pregnant? What would have happened? What if I did have a miscarriage? This next day I went to the ultrasound. I brought my sister Marianne to support. The radiologist was not able to tell me what the results were at the ultrasound and said it would be a week to 10 days before I would even find out. I thought I was going to die. I couldn't wait that long. Marianne and I decided we would go shopping at T&T and Walmart and Carbonear before heading back home. While in T&T, my phone rang. It was Dr. Pike. She said, "I have some news. You are 12 weeks and 4 days pregnant. You have already passed the 3-month period, and it looks like everything is okay for now." Then she asked me, "Are you going to go ahead with the pregnancy?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that she would even ask me this. Having a child was something I've always wanted my whole life, and I never ever believed in abortion. But apparently she explained that this was a question she had to ask considering my circumstances. I went to see a high-risk obstetrician, another word that I can hardly say, who informed me of my many dangers and complications for me and the baby. I was told that I would have a cesarean section at 24 to 25 weeks to hopefully save the baby and reduce my own health risk. Even then, there was a high possibility that the baby would be born with health problems. It is very rare to become pregnant while being on dialysis, let alone to actually have a baby go full term. I started doing dialysis every day, and at 24 weeks, I moved to St. John's to be closer to the health, science, and the Janeway. Once in town, I continued to do dialysis every day, plus I had to have the baby's heart monitored every day as well to make sure that she would not get stressed from the dialysis. Every week after my 24th week, I had to have a biophysical done, an ultrasound to make sure that everything was still well, and every time it was 100% good. At 35 weeks, everything was still going good, and my obstetrician informed me that it would be doubtful that I would need a C-section. Then on August 21st, at 37 weeks and 3 days, the day was finally here. I woke up with pain and I couldn't believe it, that it could even be contractions. And I was off to dialysis. I was in labor through dialysis, then soon after returning to the case room with no complications, no C-section, my healthy 5-pound, 4.7-ounce baby girl was born. At the age of 31, despite all odds, we were blessed to be parents. We finally have hope. To this day, I just can't stop looking in awe of her existence, considering my chance of having her was only 1.3%. Our little girl I know already is going to be a strong individual. In her life already, she has experienced what is needed to stay alive. Finding out that I was pregnant was shocking enough, but actually having her was truly a miracle. She is so beautiful and perfect, and as I always say, much more healthier than her own mother. My story of hope figuratively started so long ago, from the time I was born to now. Every treatment has been temporary, from dialysis transplant to dialysis again. Having a normal, healthy baby who is now 9 pounds 3 ounces gives my life hope that maybe someday in the near future, treatment will continue to get better, and maybe there will be a permanent solution for kidney problems. In the last 15 years, I have been seeing how medicine and treatment have changed and continues to improve. And I believe that it is due to the ongoing research and education that is funded and provided by the Kidney Foundation. That is why I believe it is very important to support the Kidney Foundation and raise awareness towards organ donation. Thank you.